don't know if you remember this, but when Trump gave his joint press conference with Putin in July 2018, and, Trump next to Putin said that Putin had denied interfering, and Trump said, I have no reason to doubt him. The freak out was unbelievable. Like the way this was described, this was like the worst thing a president has ever done. John Brennan described Trump as, quote, nothing short of treasonous, when John Brennan must have known that the FBI and the NSA actually shared Trump's conclusions. Certainly they had the low confidence assessment that had been buried. And by the way, we also learned now from the House Intelligence Report that they were aware of Putin's view on the election. And people close to Putin were saying that Putin didn't care because no matter who won, in Putin's view, it wouldn't really matter. Policy towards Russia wouldn't change. And of course, that's one of many pieces of critical information that got suppressed in order to put out this narrative that Russia was backing Trump.
Exactly. So they were taking out actual human intelligence of somebody close to Putin who was saying he doesn't care who. And they were putting in nonsense like information from the Steele dossier and little sentence fragments that 5 different CIA analysts could not agree upon, and stuff that predated Trump's even arrival on the political scene from like 2014, and one other statement saying, Trump and Putin could work together as businessmen or something like that. It was like completely amorphous, empty stuff that they used to try to say he wants Trump to win. And that's how they got to it. So it seems very clear that they had an agenda within the intelligence community to make sure this assessment came out as it did, saying Russia interfered and they did it to help Trump, which was, to some extent, a reversal from where they had been going prior to the Obama meeting. And this is where you get the Andy McCarthy's, who I really like and admire and respect, but I just really disagree with him on this, of the world, saying it's apples to oranges, because he keeps focusing on the fact that that presidential daily brief they were going to prepare for Obama on December 8th was really just going to say, that wasn't downplaying all Russian interference. It was just going to say that the Russians didn't hack election machines. And that's fine. They didn't, is his point. And so it's fine. They were going to say that. What happened in the ultimate report is they didn't come out and say they did hack election machines. They never reversed on that. It wasn't a 180 after the Obama meeting on that. It just simply focused on what the Russians did succeed at doing, like hacking the DNC and interfering in general with the goal of helping Trump. But hacking the DNC, now we're learning, appears to have been false. General interference was way overplayed. It was a bunch of bullshit, like you point out with the farms. And to help Trump was completely made up.
Correct. And here's the one criticism you can make of Tulsi Gabbard here. You can criticize her language, like accusing Obama of treason. Maybe that's not her place to make that determination. That's for the Justice Department. And also, she did conflate vote hacking with email hacking in the way that she put out these findings. So I think that's a fair critique. But as you point out, it doesn't matter, because the fact is, we learned from Tulsi's declassification something really important, which is that the intelligence on the email hacking, forget the vote hacking, that was suppressed. And the 2 premier U.S. intelligence agencies who would be best placed to assess who hacked the DNC and gave the emails to WikiLeaks, they had low confidence in the allegation that it was Russia. That's the bottom line here. So even if there was a conflation made between vote machine hacking and DNC server hacking, it doesn't matter, because the intelligence on the email hacking said that we don't have any evidence that Russia did it. And that was kept from the public. That's a major scandal, because for years we were told this was the intelligence consensus. If you question this, you're a Russian propagandist, you're treasonous, as John Brennan said of Donald Trump when he questioned this. And that is the scandal here, the suppression of intelligence to manufacture a lie, in the same way that the U.S. government did in going to war in Iraq. And by the way, some of the same players in the Iraq WMD hoax are involved here, including James Clapper, who oversaw the production of the intelligence community assessment along with John Brennan. In his memoir, James Clapper writes about how he basically, in the rush to help the Bush administration make its case for invading Iraq, he went and found things that weren't there. That's almost a direct quote. I went and found things that weren't there. So what he was admitting to is manufacturing intelligence. So why are we surprised that he wouldn't, why are we surprised that he did the same thing here? And why are we supposed to take these people's word on faith, especially given their record? And as a journalist, I mean, look, I'm not a Trump guy. I'm not a fan, but it's not for unelected intelligence bureaucrats to decide, who gets to be in power, what the foreign policy of the U.S. is. It's for the elected president. And what we saw here was just a contemptuous response to an election in which the wrong guy in the eyes of powerful people won. And so they did work to undermine him. And no matter where you are on the political spectrum, you shouldn't support that.
The other thing about now learning that Russia hacked the DNC being a lie, or at least being totally unsupported, is it remains to this day one of the main things people downplaying the Tulsi news rely on to stand up their own conclusions that Russia was trying to help Trump. They say he hacked, Putin hacked the DNC. Putin released through WikiLeaks the dirt, at least some of it, that he had on Hillary. And therefore, how can you say he had any goal other than to help Donald Trump? That was not a helpful release for Hillary Clinton. And that's yet another reason why it is so significant that we're now learning that we don't actually have the goods on Russia being behind that DNC hack.
Exactly. We're learning this nearly 9 years later. And this is not the peak of Russiagate anymore. People have moved on to other stories. But at the time, if you read any single news account in establishment media, it's just taken as fact that Russia hacked and leaked those emails. And there was never any scrutiny whatsoever. And the point that people like myself and Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi and others were trying to make is, Russia might have hacked the DNC. It's certainly possible, but we've never been given the evidence for it. And the role of a journalist is not to write down what intelligence officials tell you to say, is to look for the facts. And the more facts we get, the more they undermine the narrative that Russia hacked the DNC. And even on the issue of voting machines, yes, it's true. The Obama administration never said that Russia hacked voting machines. But if you look at the media clips, like what was the common talking point from Hillary Clinton on down? Russia hacked the election. Russia hacked the election. And it did create an impression among many people, especially Democratic voters, if you look at polls, that Russia had changed the votes. And that's what happens when you have these propaganda campaigns that you're not allowed to question. And if you do, you're called names, you're marginalized, you're kicked out of media spaces. They just create consensus. Like no one issued an edict saying you all have to believe that Russia hacked the DNC, but just this sort of group mania allowed for this to be pervasive. And even now, when evidence comes out showing that the intelligence wasn't there to support it, has any mainstream outlet reported on this? Have they reported that the NSA and the FBI had low confidence in the Russia hacking leak allegation?
No.
Has anyone ever
They're
reported
ignoring
that?
all of this. They're going with the Democrat line of like, there's no there, the Obama line, there's no there, the Pod Save America line, there's no there, which I'm going to get to in 1 second. But let me show a little bit of that. This is from the Media Research Center and what we were hearing about Russia hacking the election at the time, SOT 63.
Russia hacking the election to elect Trump is the end of our democracy. Votes were definitely affected. Russia hacked the election to tilt it to Mr. Trump.
The Russians definitively hacked the election.
Russia did hack the election.
No doubt. The Russians hacked the election.
Yes, Russia hacked the election.
Fact, Russia hacked the election.
President-elect Donald Trump still not sounding convinced that Russia hacked the election.
If you can get him to accept that Russia hacked the election, see if you can get him to accept who won the Civil War.
The director of national intelligence, the head of the National Security Agency, the head of the FBI, all of these intelligence experts saying Russia hacked the election.
The FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the former director of national intelligence, James Clapper, they've all said this. So to believe that that's wrong, you have to believe they're all involved in an elaborate conspiracy to get Donald Trump.
Oh my God, that's an amazing clip. I hadn't actually seen it myself, Aaron. And by the way, the lower third on the CNN clip where they're saying, they hacked. These are all the officials and the agencies that said they hacked. The lower third is Trump, unsure if Russia interfered. So Trump was the only one who actually was right. Actually, I'm not quite certain whether they did or they didn't. And all those media figures so sure because the NSA and the CIA and the FBI were undoubtedly leaking to them, telling them that it was so. And they completely forgot a journalist's obligation, which is to kick the tires, especially on a story that is hand delivered to you with a big red ribbon on it from any three-letter agency.
It's unlike anything I've ever seen, the level of media subservience to this narrative. And also, everyone also was convinced that there was a conspiracy between Trump and Russia, too. Try to challenge that on one of these network shows, and it was very, very difficult. In fact, they didn't even allow on guests who would challenge that narrative. It's just this was the talking point. And even though there's no one, we don't live in a totalitarian society, there's no official telling people what to say, but everybody just intuited that this was the narrative to go with. This was the way to respond to Trump. If you wanted to get into media spaces, this is what you had to say. And it was absolute mania. And by the way, for me, all this fear mongering about foreign interference, like I'm on the left end of the spectrum. I do think there's foreign interference. I think Israeli interference in U.S. democracy is a lot more significant. AIPAC spends tens of millions of dollars to elect candidates and defeat candidates based on what it deems to be in the interests of Israel. Marjorie Taylor Greene's called for AIPAC to be registered as a foreign agent. I think that's a much more significant foreign interference in U.S. democracy than whenever Russian trolls put out on social media. But that all gets completely ignored because that is bipartisan. And here, because there was this partisan effort, started by Hillary Clinton, to frame Trump as a Russian asset and blame Russia for his election, rather than look at the Clinton wing's own dysfunctions, their own failures. Everybody went along with it. And we're still paying the price because now, people still want answers. And, Trump voters especially were, dismissed with contempt as malleable dupes who were brainwashed by Russia into not voting for, saintly Hillary Clinton. And so there's also this elitist contempt that underpins all of this. So accordingly, people in the media don't want to be embarrassed for going along with a massive scam. And that's why it's still very difficult to get accountability. And that's why they're still not reporting on the countervailing facts, the low confidence assessment from the FBI and the NSA. No one ever acknowledged that CrowdStrike, the Clinton campaign contractor, had admitted under oath they had no evidence of Russian hacking and leaking. No one.
It's like amazing when you pair that with the red siren warning they'd been given that, hey, Hillary Clinton's team is planning to try to paint Trump as a Russian proxy and agent of some sort. In order, the purpose was in order to distract from her email scandal. If you look at what's unveiled in the intelligence. So our intelligence agencies knew that at a minimum, and if the Fox News reporting turns out to be true, cooperated with it. But at a minimum, knew. And then when the alleged intel started coming in from Hillary sources, like the Steele dossier and the CrowdStrike thing on who hacked the DNC, they didn't say, okay, we were warned this is going to happen. Here's the bullshit that this woman is orchestrating. Let's not get hooked on that line like a gullible fish. They jumped on it, ran with it. And while an initial report to President Obama was going to say, well, the Russians didn't really do this much, it took one woodshedding from him from the sound of it. And they were all on board with, they did it, cite the Steele dossier, cite the CrowdStrike information. They were completely on team, let's get Trump.
They were. And that's what the Mueller investigation was for. Like the Mueller investigation essentially was waged to make this whole narrative look credible. And they spent tens of millions of dollars making this thing seem somewhat legitimate. And of course, the media ran with it. And if you read all the indictments that came out of the Mueller probe, in retrospect, I mean, at the time they were so dumb, but even now, especially given all we know now, they're written by really smart people. People have probably gone to Ivy League schools, law schools, and they're basically wielding their intelligence to make it appear as if they have something on Trump and Russia when there was absolutely nothing. The indictment of George Papadopoulos and Carter Page and Michael Flynn. Michael Flynn, who was accused of lying to the FBI about discussing sanctions with the Russian ambassador, when if you actually read the transcript of his wiretap conversation, they're not even talking about sanctions. They're talking about the fact that Obama had kicked out a bunch of Russian diplomats. And all Flynn basically said was, listen, we're going to come in soon. Things will be different. So don't retaliate, too harshly because we want to have good relations. We don't want this to go out of hand. That's all he said. And he gets indicted and he's forced to resign. He's basically sabotaged by the FBI.
Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they are moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, like from Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. And Birch was an advertiser on this show 12 months ago. If you had purchased then, you'd be 40% richer today. Now's the time. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by burying in record quantities. Global instability and tension is high, and Birch Gold makes owning physical gold so easy. Easily convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898, and Birch Gold is going to send you a free info kit on gold. Look into it. See if it's right for you. There's no obligation, just useful information to help you make a decision. With an A+ rating, with a Better Business Bureau, and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text MK to 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.